What is the one sexual experience you would love to relive again? One time my ex was curious to see how many times she could make me finish in one day. It was a nice day. Sounds nice in your 20s. Hard work after 30. An all-night session in college with a girl I'd had a crush on since elementary school. Years of sexual tension exploded that night. It was magic. I feel like everyone has that one person in their life that when they finally duck it makes it worth the wait. Sounds like a great time. Doesn't always end well. Despite how exciting it is. Nearly a decade ago, when Facebook was new to me, I discovered that an old high school crush was living in the same city. About 500 miles from where we had both grown up. I sent her a message, saying long time no talk, and telling her how I'd love to meet up for a drink sometime. Kind of surprised me when she got back right away, accepting my invitation. We had a great time. Totally hit it off. Even though I sensed some mutual sexual chemistry. I was still a little surprised when she initiated a make-out session right in front of the bar while waiting for an Uber to take us back to the BART station. Things heated up fast, and she suggested that we get a hotel room for the night. And, sure enough, there happened to be a really nice one right there in Japantown. Gorgeous place with elegant soaking tubs in the room. Let's just say the sexual chemistry wasn't a fluke and that one night turned into the entire weekend. We went at it like rabbits for the next couple of days, only leaving the room to take a walk and get some provisions midday Saturday. The entire time I felt like I was living a dream. I kept telling myself this kind of stuff doesn't really happen. It was just amazing to be with this woman, about whom I had endlessly fantasized during my high school years. If 16-year-old me could have known the things she'd be doing to me 20 years later. The kid may have died from the shock. I was so excited at the end of that weekend. And we both agreed to do it again soon. I played it cool for a few days, and didn't contact her. But in reality I could not stop thinking about her. And all the hot fun we'd had. Finally, after 3 days, I broke down and texted her. I asked when she wanted to meet up again. Her response was almost immediate, informing me that she was totally into it, but that her husband wouldn't be out of town for a few more weeks. Had a work conference in Montreal and I bombed my presentation. I was so down in the dumps. And one of our colleagues from across the country comforted me. We ate. We drank. We stayed up all night just going at it. All over a hotel room. We passed out at 5 and I had to start my next presentation at 8. Woke up. Didn't shower. Aced the presentation hungover and smelling like 6. Went back to the room. Threw up. Went at it until checkout. Took the most hungover flight I ever had. Best night. When I became duck buddies with an older divorcee, she would invite me over for marathon duck sessions. She was insatiable and nothing was off the table. I still think about her sometimes. It was 15 years ago, and she's still in my spank bank. What ended the contact? Nothing monumental. We just saw each other less and less, and the contact eventually stopped. My ex came over wearing a skirt one time. I was cooking dinner, and we talked for a bit. Then she pulled out a chair, sat down, pulled her skirt up and started masturbating. She eventually told me to come over and told me to get on my knees and made me go down on her. Then she sat me down on the chair and rode me. Still pops into my head sometimes. A man I saw maybe half a dozen times was incredible in bed. But the night I would relive was when the bed frame snapped in half during the act. He walked to the foot of the bed, grabbed each side of the mattress, and yanked it onto the floor with me still on it. We immediately kept going at it as if we hadn't been interrupted. Sexiest thing that's ever happened to me. The first time me and my ex did it. I felt like I was tripping on Molly or something. I've never experienced something so emotional and weirdly spiritual during 6 LOL. Then he looked me in the eyes and told me he loved me. I melted. Unfortunately, he turned out to be a master manipulator and a narcissist LOL, so he knew exactly what he was doing. Made me fall in love with him for a reason. Ugh, I'm sorry. It's the best 6 but with the worst person. Easy one. First night with my now wife. We'd been kinda on again off again for a few months and dancing around each other. Finally had her to my place. Made her a nice dinner. We watched a movie. Had a little wine. Make out for a while and she says, "Hey, let's stop this." Which made my heart sink because I was really nuts about her. And then she says, "Because we should move to the bedroom." She has me go in, get naked and wait for her, and I will never ever in a million years forget the image of her coming around the door frame and just her thumb hugging the wall. I learned later that she has body image issues and was genuinely afraid how I was going to react. I reacted by dropping to my knees, probably while drooling and thanking every god I could think of that she answered my OkCupid message, which I think let her know I was into her. We then had a long night of amazing 6, which 11 years and a kid later is still pretty much exactly how I react to her. I've had a few other pretty wild nights with others, but nothing tops being with the one you love. Edit. Some people DM'd me to ask. It was Wreck-It Ralph that we watched and sealed the deal. The first time my husband OMG. I've been crazy ABT him since I was 6. I moved away and we reconnected in our mid-20s. He picked me up. We listened to the rock and roll station. Headbanging and singing along together. The chemistry in the car along was insane. We sat on his couch, candles lit all over the room, and talked for hours. At one point, we began kissing and he has really big, long hands. So when he fingered me, I fell in love. When he went down on me, I fell deeper. I was throbbing so hard. It hurt. So I grabbed his hand and led him into the bedroom, and we made the sweetest love. When it was over, he asked if I'd be his girlfriend, and we laughed. Still the best 6 of my life. No man or woman can compare. I had a one-night stand with a girl right after getting out of prison, so it had been a while. She was a bona fide hoe. And I don't mean that disparagingly. She just loved fucking. We went out to eat at this Chinese restaurant, and it was going okay. We leave and get into her car in the parking lot, and she says something like, "Can I tell you something? I'm kind of a slut." And she kinda pouted when she said it. Then we were getting into it, and I was fingering her, and she told me to finger her as at the same time. We ended up hooking up and I ducked her doggy-slide with her as out of the open driver's side door. And her body in the driver's seat. This was right in the parking lot LOL. It got really raunchy and nasty. Afterwards she drove me to my halfway house and we never spoke again LMAO. I probably think about it once a week, and it's been 8 years. Many years ago. Had this FWB. I was moving across country soon and she wanted something special before I left. Specifically, she wanted me to take a bath with her. So I go over to her place, and she's got the place all decked out with candles, and she fills up the tub using some kind of bubble bath. The tub WSS, one of those old school ones with feet. Pretty big. So we get in the tub and start fooling around. Foreplay, intercourse, etc. Now, what made this night extra special was we were having terrific thunderstorms. They kept rolling through. Getting louder and softer. The rain getting more or less intense. And the wind picking up and dying back down. So there we are in this hot, steamy bathroom. With cool, wet wind blowing in the windows. Lightning flashing and thunder crashing and booming. It was incredible. We ducked in the tub until we couldn't stand being in there anymore. Then we got out and ducked in her bed. Then we went out on the patio and drank beer and blazed. Then we went back inside and ducked some more. All night the storm just kept going. I came 6 times. She was one of the best lays I've ever had anyways. But the combination of the storm and her being a little sad about me leaving made it that much more intense and special. Best 6 of my life. I had a FWB for a few months, and one day I told him I was having a stressful day. I work from home, so he came over while I was working and gave me a whole body massage, and then ate me out until I came. Then left so I could finish working. I would probably be a much happier person if that happened regularly. LOL. Also, anytime I've been able to have an orgasm at the same time as my partner is amazing. I want to do that again and again. I worked in the summers at the beach in a resort kind of town. This town claims to be a family town with a drinking problem, but when you actually live there the whole summer you feel like it's a drinking town with a family problem. Anyway, I worked on a tour boat that catered mostly toward young kids. To be more specific, it was a pirate ship. I was a pirate. Every day I'd wake up early, get in my outfit, and take families out on a pirate adventure 6 times a day. We go out in the bay, give them a pirate crew name, give them tattoos, start to look for treasure. As we are looking, we run into a bad pirate who found the treasure and proceed to have a water fight with him. He'd drive around our ship and shoot at unsuspecting adults while the kids manned the 6 water cannons on each side. The pay was better than you'd think, and I was always done work around 5, which was perfect when living at the beach. The other part one loved about the job, aside from the booty load of pirate jokes I have, was it was always a conversation starter at the bar. And for some reason a lot of girls thought it was awesome and adorable that I was working with kids all day. So one night I managed to meet a very attractive girl from Ireland. We hit it off immediately. I'm asking her about Ireland, and she just wanted to know more about my life as a pirate. So eventually I asked her if she wanted to see my boat. The dock was pretty empty at night, and the owner of the ship never seemed to care about workers going to the boat after hours. She was all about it, so we began voyage to my vessel. It was such a nice night, so we went beachside and walked in the sand. We had been kissing all night and started to get more into it on the beach. I wanted to stop on the beach and into it a few times, but she kept insisting, and that Irish brogue was more than convincing. By the time we made it to the docks it was around 4:30 a.m. So we climbed aboard and I gave her the tour. Gave her a treasure ring. Dressed up a bit for her. In no time at all we started going at it, and my God, she was amazing. She made me keep the eye patch on and use my pirate voice for most of it. After what felt like hours, but most likely minutes, we finished up and just looked up at the sky. Stars in the sky. Water rocking the boat. It was just amazing. We stayed there until the sun came up. After that we did it one more time before any of my coworkers would arrive, and that kind of just added to the thrill. After that she called an Uber promising she'd ride my boat again. And the best part was I was finally right on time for work, and my boss even commended me for already being in costume and ready to go for the day. TLDR, worked as a pirate on a boat for families in the summer in a resort beach town. Met an Irish cutie. Ducked on my boat dressed in my costume until sunrise. Wasn't late to work. When I was dating my now wife, we got to spend 3 days at her aunt's apartment while she was out of town. We were making love nonstop and would fall asleep when tired. Inside each other. A feeling of closeness and comfort that is hard to describe in words. Was showering with my then girlfriend, now ex, at the time, and was unbelievable horny and just ogling her in the shower while waiting with anticipation. We had planned to duck after getting out, so I wasn't being weird. I ended up putting her in so many positions and ravaging her to the point that the bed was shaking and creaking like it had heavy furniture being rapidly thrown on it by cartoon characters just from my thrusting. Missionary. Blew my load so hard that I got dizzy and tried not to pass out. Some laughs were had too. God, I missed 6 with her. Taking a man's virginity. It doesn't matter how many times it happens. That first time lowering myself on them. That first time their hesitant hands touch my thighs, my breasts, my arse. The lightheadedness they feel and the awe in their eyes. I've lost count how many virgin men I have been with, and I always want to relive it. Every guy. no matter their weight, the lack or excess amount of hair they have, no matter their height. They are so gorgeous. Warning, this gets graphic. I dated a woman in an open marriage whose husband was a super interesting person and very kind to me whenever I'd be over. I entered the relationship genuinely as a she and I thing, and it stayed that way for months. Along the way, I learned the husband is into being cuckolded and has a smallish big dick. Certainly much thinner than mine according to his wife. He and I bond a bit. And eventually they asked me to join them in an MFM threesome with dominant/submissive dynamics involving cuckolding, with the wife being submissive too. I love being in charge. So that was an easy yes. We're all having some light fun together. And I'm trying to think of a specific command to give to tie all our fantasies and roles together. And I tell them, I want husband to fill wife with his cum, and I'm going to use that as lube so she can handle taking my thick big dig. He took off his cage, did as he was told within seconds, caged himself back up, and watched me have sex with his wife. He mentioned later he didn't experience post-nut clarity. He just stayed turned on the entire time. The wife later told me that had the most incredible sex after I left, and were all over each other for days after that. For me, the physical sensation, along with the mentality of where my partners were at, was the single hottest moment I've ever experienced sexually, and I wish I could relive it over and over. 43 years after last seeing my 8th grade crush, we went out for a beer. An hour, and we were old people making out in a bar, being an hour from each of our homes. We parked on the railroad tracks. Even us old people can do a lot in a Honda CR-V. She's now my wife. One night during my senior year in high school, I climbed through a girl's window at like 1 a.m. and I didn't get home until right before my grandparents woke up. Being a stupid teenager, I thought we were just gonna hang out and play Minecraft. TBF, she was playing Minecraft without any clothes on when I made it through. When I was in college, I was driving through Denver, Colorado on my way to Dallas to meet up with family for Christmas. A woman kept passing me on the interstate, then would slow down and let me pass her. This went on 4 or 5 times before it became obvious to me she was trying to get my attention. She motioned for me to pull off at the next off-ramp. We both pulled into a McDonald's parking lot and started to talk. She was in her early 40s and incredibly attractive. She was pretty direct and asked if I wanted to come to her house and spend the night. She didn't have to ask twice. For the next 24 hours we have some pretty incredible sex. I think we had sex about 6 or 7 times before we said our goodbyes. 45 years later, I still think about it often. Thanks, Lynn. A much older woman woke me up with a chicken biscuit from Chick-fil-A and proceeded to put both of my gonads into her mouth while I ate it. I think I cried, I was so happy. Edit, forgot the best part of this story too. I went home with this woman after a club night. So later that morning she gives me a ride home 30 minutes away and drops me off at my driveway like that scene in Big where Tom Hanks walks towards his house and turns back into a kid. That was literally how it ended. And it was my parents' house where I was living at the time. A super public duck. Years ago. Before kids and a committed relationship. I definitely enjoyed casual sex. I was seeing this one guy regularly who already did things to me I didn't know were possible. Well, one time we went to a very popular public nature park in Greenville, South Carolina. It was like 2 a.m. There were no kids out. Mostly just a bunch of drunken 20-somethings. Don't worry. I'm not a weirdo. Well, I got my 8 right under a bridge that a bunch of people were on. Nothing more exciting than wanting to scream from pleasure while simultaneously trying to keep quiet so you don't get caught. I had nothing going on, so I walked to the bar down the street by myself. Only one girl really caught my eye, a cute, petite, nerdy girl with glasses. But she was dancing on some guy. Later I coincidentally found myself sitting next to her when the bar announced some kind of wacky contest that involved standing on the bar and taking shots. I stood up for that, and she stood up too and started dancing with me. And eventually grinding on me so hard that the bartender was like, "Hey, you guys gotta stop." We migrated to another bar with her friend group, and then she asked if I wanted to go to her car and smoke a bowl. We had been in a second-story bar, so we got in the elevator, and as soon as the doors closed she leaned her full body weight against me and asked if she could kiss me. We made out in the elevator, went to her car to smoke, and I asked her if she wanted to come back to my apartment. After some more make-out time in the apartment, I peeled her tight jeans off and went down on her for a solid 15 minutes while she praised my form, my favorite compliment to receive. After she returned the favor for a few minutes, I told her, "I want to duck you." The next couple of hours had some alcohol in me, so this wasn't going to be a quick one, involved some of the most intense and primal sex of my life. She was fantastic in bed. So much eye contact, direct communication, super intense dirty talk. "Your big dig feels so good in my pussy," uttered as if in tears. That type of thing. Kisses of appreciation on the back of my neck in moments where I put my head down and thrust into her with all my weight, down for every position or suggestion. When I finally pulled out, she asked me if there's anywhere, besides inside her, that I'd like to come. I could only stammer out, "Mouth okay?" before she cheerfully nodded and put her mouth on me. Just in time too, because the tip of her tongue was enough to finally push me over the edge as she swallowed what was likely the largest load of my life. On top of all that, she had the wettest and tightest vag I can imagine. It looked like I had thrown my sheets into a running bath. And the next day I could still feel the ridges of her pussy imprinted on my big dig. I guess all in all it isn't the craziest sex story, but it was just a night where every single moment was more awesome than the last. She spent the night. I walked her to her car the next morning, and she gave me a really passionate kiss. We ducked a couple of more times over the next couple of weeks before she got back with her longtime ex, who she ended up marrying. All good. But nothing topped that first time we did it. I was having a terrible day. Just in a bad pissy mood and stressed out. My boyfriend put me in the car. We stopped and got some beer and stuff to make sandwiches, then he drove me to the beach. We really didn't have any money and I had somewhere to be the next day, so we couldn't exactly get a hotel room. We decided to wander off to the wildlife beach, which was secluded and usually empty. It was nighttime, so we laid down a blanket and did our thing. It was some really good sex. We finish and I am butt naked. I stand up to stretch when I hear a soda being opened. What we confused for a log up on a hill was actually two people who had watched the whole thing. We get dressed and gather our stuff. As we were walking away I yelled, "Have a good night, and hope you enjoyed the show." They laughed, and we headed home. What started as a terrible day ended up being a favorite memory. Had sex with this girl from Poland that lived in the UK. Met her on Tinder whilst she was away getting a bob job. When she got back to the UK, she drove to my house and we chilled all day watching dumb shows and just hanging out. When she got up to leave, it was as if she had wet herself. Her jeans were drenched from her waist down to her knees. I was shocked, and she explained it just happens. I didn't think about it again until we met up at her house. Spent the afternoon in her room. Started to have sex. Crossed her legs over while she was on her back and then pushed up and leant on her crossed legs, essentially pushing her waist up into the air. Had sex in this position for 30 seconds. Looked down. She was so wet it pooled in her stomach where she was pushed up. I'm talking, I put a finger in it, and it was up to the first joint in my finger. She would squirt literally on demand. Any sign of sexual intimacy, she would just become completely soaking wet. We joked she would have to walk around and chill with no trousers and pants on. She did just that. Sexual bliss for months. Never been with a girl like that since. This happened in February. I had been single since September, and really hadn't been trying to get anything started with a new person, as I was planning to leave the country I was living in. The day before I was set to leave the country, I was having final goodbye drinks with a girlfriend at a pub. A group of 2 guys and a woman start talking to my friend and I and join our table. One of the guys is insanely attractive, and I haven't had sex in months, so I was very aware of his muscular arms and beautiful smile. I had had a few drinks and was shamelessly staring at him and flirting. We somehow got to the realization that we both wanted to have sex, so I jokingly said, "Let's do it now." He was shocked, but pushed back and kind of dared me. I grabbed his hand, took him to the single-occupancy bathroom at the pub, and locked us inside. We fooled around for a few minutes, and then returned to the table. He had plans to meet some mates of his after the pub, so he invited me along. We end up at a house with 3 other guys, just drinking and hanging out. After a few more drinks, I started asking what the next steps were, and when could we have more sex. I asked if he wanted me to have sex with him in front of his friends, and, again, he kind of dared me to. So I started having sex with him, and one of his friends joined in while the others watched. Afterwards, I got driven home and slumbered wonderfully before my flight out of the country the next day. I had a smile glued to my face that whole flight. I'd never done anything like that before and would very much like to do that over and over again. My roommate is about 20 years older than me. We were coming home from a night of drinking and he was headed to his room and motioned for me to come to him. I did, and he grabbed me for a kiss and stuck his fingers between my legs and told me to come in. I ran downstairs to change and he was already texting asking where I was. I came up to his room and we jumped into the master shower. He soaped me up and I washed him while we kissed and touched each other. We dried off and went to his room where he had a spare mattress on the floor. He went in doggy style and then I got onto the actual bed, my legs over the edge, and he held them in the air as he was pounding into me. I then played down on the actual bed and we had sex with him on top then me. For me to finish, he fingered me until I came. I then gave him a BJ. Then while he jerked himself off to finish, I licked his gonads while he fingered my ass. We were FWB for almost 3 years. Still roommates, and the last time we hooked up was NYE. Hoping to get him to give in on my birthday in July. I met a much younger woman and went to a park with her. We were into each other, and I felt bold enough to go behind her and put my arms around her waist. She repositioned my hands to holding her breasts under her clothes. So, I began playing with them and kissing her in the neck. We met up again a few days later, only this time going to my room. One thing led to another, and I was inside her. Missionary. The whole experience was powerful. From the first bit of cuddling all the way to when she had to leave. We spent 3 hours just having sex, enjoying each other, playing with each other, laughing together, and talking about everything. Even after I first ejaculated, it was easy to stay physically inside her. When I needed to rest, she held me to her. She played with my hair and told me how it felt so great to even have my weight on her. We just lost touch before we could do it again. I wish we could have done it far more than once. I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship when I met the bodybuilder. I invited him back to my place. He barely got inside before getting his hands on me. He kissed me like he was starving and I was his last meal. But the moment I always come back to was when he lifted me onto the counter like I weighed nothing. Then when he wanted to move to the bedroom, he scooped me up and put me exactly where he wanted me. We could never work out, and I have no way to find him. But I treasure that memory. Was hooking up with an Asian girl. Was a one-night stand kinda thing. She was on her knees blowing me and I was sitting on the edge of the bed. She stopped, and we started making out really passionately while she was jacking me off, still on her knees. It's been over 5 years and for some reason that's still stuck in my head. I also think I took her NAL virginity, which she seemed to very much like, but that's not even the part one remember most. Had a girlfriend that after rimming her, she wanted NAL, which she hadn't done before, but ended up enjoying. A couple of weeks later, while having sex, she exclaimed that she hated the fact that she always found herself wanting NAL with me. She said she loved the feeling of me, pretty large, stretching her, and coming deep in her as. It just became a very frequent thing. I was in my early 20s and so was she. We were good friends, but I was her side piece, and we both just got off of work and met at my apartment to jump in the shower together. I had an average body. Not muscular, but a chest that stuck out further than my stomach, and she was a curvy blonde with nice sized breasts and ass. We got in the shower together, kissed, and fondled each other with soapy water. She got out first and went right to the bedroom without dressing, and seeing her breasts still glistening made me immediately rock hard. I quickly dried and went to the bedroom with my big dig up and hard. She sat on my bed and I approached, and she took me in her mouth and sucked my big dig for 10 minutes before I made her lay down so I could eat her pussy. I love eating pussy. The smell, the taste, the plump clit pulsating on my tongue is an immediate rush for me, and I loudly and greedily feasted on her flower until she came. Then I pinned her legs back, going slowly in and out. Then I turned her on her side as I got faster and faster. Then I put her on all fours, giving her good hard thrusts in between 40 seconds or so of quicker thrusts. Doing that until I felt myself getting close, then I'd stop to lick her pussy and penetrate it with my tongue, repeating this cycle for a while. The whole time she was moaning and wailing and grunting when I thrusted really hard. She laid on her back panting, and I got on top of her and felt my big dig bathing in her juices. It was hot and I could feel myself twitching, and I asked her if I could just stay inside her for a minute. She just kind of nodded and put her arms around my neck while I kissed her a little. I started to duck her really hard, and I never used condoms, so when I was ready to come I would pull out, and when I did this time she scooted herself down and pushed her breasts together while I jerked off, and as I came on her she smiled and said yeah as I let out this long grunt that made one of my legs shake. I never ducked that hard before or since, and wish I could relive it. I legitimately dated two sisters. Both of these Greek girls were fine AF. I got along with the older one really well. Peas in a pod we were, just a sensationally funny and likable person. Her younger sister was very attractive, though, and the two of us, closer in age, had a sexual tension between us. I dated one, then became a friendship, and I started dating the other. These two girls liked to screwed and did OT mind sharing. In fact, they both enjoyed having sex with the same man. It turned them on to have sex in front of each other, not with each other. The best and most wild sex I ever had was with these sisters. I'll take another round of that before I ship off this blue marble. Went to uni with a girl and we chatted and hung out a bit. I always fancied her. I left uni and randomly met her a few years later at a gig in a different city, where she happened to be from, and we went home together. I went down on her while she recited Shakespeare's soliloquies. We hooked up for nearly a year after that. But I will never ever forget that first time with her.